I think I'll call the meeting to order. This is the Joint Committees of Economic Development and Planning and Public Works. We are here to discuss implementation of the parking management plan. So without further ado, I'll kick things over to Steve and Laura, who can give an overview, and we can start discussions from there.
Thank you, Councilor. As the council will recall, we went through a process of developing a parking management plan, which primarily dealt with the two commercial districts in town, Watertown Square and Coolidge Square. Did a pretty extensive analysis of both supply and demand and made a bunch of recommendations for implementation. The council subsequently approved the plan and asked us to come back with recommendations for implementing the recommendations of the plan. So tonight's that. I will just add one additional thing. As you may recall, we did also come to the council and ask for authorization to purchase new meter heads. And as I told you then, that was done with the idea that, whatever you decided to implement in terms of the recommendations of the parking management plan, that those would be consistent with the new equipment that was being purchased. And so we've gone forward with that. So with that, what I'll do is turn it over to Laura to sort of summarize the recommendations, implementation recommendations that we would recommend to the council for action. Laura?
Okay, I'll go through each one and then stop and take your questions and input, feedback, discussion. So number one, as the first recommendation, there are 10 recommendations in the parking management plan. The first one was to upgrade the parking payment technology. This one is underway. We have not quite ordered, but we're close to ordering new solar-powered electronic meters that take credit cards as well as cash. And if our current schedule holds, we expect those to be installed in November. We were able to skip the RFP process there because MAPC had done a procurement for the region of the best parking meter companies and pay by phone as well. I'm also exploring pay by phone. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that at the same time or not. Any questions about that?
So if I could just clarify, so these heads will not be doing pay by phone?
Not at the, we're not at the same point with pay by phone as we are with ordering the meters. Again, if you have feelings about that, I'd like to hear what they are. I am talking to 2 pay by phone companies right now.
Add to that, it's the technology, again, is something that can be done with these meter heads. The purchase of the meter heads doesn't make that a viable or unviable option.
Right. We could add it at any time.
Okay, so whatever we buy for the heads and whatever we do with the pay per phone, they're not the same hardware allowed.
Yeah.
Councilor Palumbo?
Yeah, I apologize if I missed something there. Are you saying that why is it that we're not moving to pay by phone now? Because you're negotiating with 2?
Yeah, it's just sequential. At first we get the meters, and then now I'm in conversation with the pay by phone, with 2 pay by phone companies about
okay, thank you.
Adding that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments or anything on this one? Councilor Feltner?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so you're saying we would install them and use them, but not have the technology in place. I'm sorry, I'm asking the same question, maybe the third way. I'm just.
We would have the technology to use credit cards and coins, but not phone. But we will have that soon.
Okay, Great, yeah, just at least to have credit card, especially with the pandemic, we don't want to be stuck just using coin. Thank you.
Councilor Picciarelli, then Councilor Canellis.
Okay, what the recommendations that were in the presentation, all that, including the license plate recognition technology, is all being done. So the implementation plan includes everything that was in the presentation. I just want to be clear with Laura.
Yeah, we're not doing license plate recognition. We're doing pay by space, the same as what you have now. We're keeping all of the meter heads. We're not going to like a kiosk style where you would need to know your license plate like they have in Belmont Center. We're not doing that. Because we already had a lot of the equipment. All we had to do was replace the guts in most cases. So it just didn't save a lot of money to do the kiosks. And I think people do prefer to be able to just walk up to the front of their car and pay.
Okay, so that I just, again, for the minutes, so we're doing right now, credit card and coin heads, pay by phone will come later, no kiosk, no license plate recognition.
Yeah.
Correct.
Councilor Canellis.
Thank you. So is there an additional cost for the upgrade to the pay by phone or any other software improvements or upgrades?
My understanding is that there is no cost to the town, but there is an additional cost to the user. There's something like 15 cents a transaction for pay by phone.
All right, so the encumbrance that the town has made for the purchase of the meters will not change, for the meter heads will not change. That's our bottom line cost.
You know, I want to just hedge my bets the slightest bit. That's how it looks. But since this is, you know, I haven't done this before, there have been things that have come up that I didn't expect. So I don't want to say there will be absolutely no additional cost. But we can't spend any more money than we have right now. But that, I just hesitate to promise you that there will be no additional costs until I really have been a little bit further down the process.
So how long do you think before we know the final cost?
Well, we have the final cost for the meters. It's the pay by phone that I'm just still exploring right now. You know, there are some additional services you could get. We're having a meeting this week to talk about enforcement. I just don't want to, I'd rather say it this way than come back to you and, you know, say, oh, I made a mistake. I'm not totally all the way through the process yet to say that there will not be any additional costs.
So it looks as though Steve wants to say something.
Well, I think the point is that the equipment that we're buying we know what the cost of that is, and that's set. There are different vendors who provide pay by phone service, and I think the reason Laura's hedging her bets a little bit is because some of them have different ways to go about making their money. And while it's attractive for them to market it to us as we have a no-cost option, we want to make sure we evaluate that and make sure it's the best option to go forward with. As Laura said, they provide a charge to the customer for each transaction because it's all, you know, based on credit cards, and credit cards charge fees as well. The one other aspect about it that I think is important to note, and maybe the other reason Laura's hedging her bets a little bit, is that it also has a enforcement tool that you use, which is basically a carry around. I'm having a mental block on the term for it, but basically an enforcement handheld.
Right, handheld device.
Portable reader.
Yeah, that they use, and we have ones now that we use from our collection agency. You know, if we had to use a different one for that service, then if we paid for that, it might make the service less expensive or vice versa. So, you know, we're certainly working on it, trying to find a way to make it as inexpensive to us as possible.
So this is still a work in process as to the final cost. other than the procurement of the devices?
I would state it slightly different. I would say that we have a final cost for the meters. If we decide to go forward with a pay by phone option that has a fiscal impact, then we'll be back to you to talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just say Kenny lost power again, so I'm just going to fill in. I see Lisa has her hand up, and then John Gannon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know, having personally used the City of Boston meters, they have a similar concept. It sounds like they're solar powered. They do have credit options, but the cost of the credit option for Boston is 25 cents per transaction. And if we're paying, having residents, out-of-towners pay 25 cents for a 30-minute period, that's a 50% surcharge on top of what they're paying, which sounds pretty high based on what Watertown charges. And I'm sure that's probably an industry standard. So I wondered if we could search to, minimize that excessive surcharge on our meters.
Maybe Steve, if you could answer that. This came up a couple of years ago when we were looking at that. And unfortunately, there is a credit card fee that needs to be paid. And there's different ways of doing that. I think, Steve, we had looked at, we could increase the hourly rate, or we could just have, if you choose to pay by something other than coins, you would assume the cost of that.
Or may I suggest perhaps instead of having a 25-cent fee on top of a 50 cents hour, maybe making a 2 or 3% of the transaction, which would be a lot better than surcharging 50% on top of a parking meter fee.
Yeah, so I would offer two things. One, again, that's part of the ongoing conversation. Two, we did recommend in the parking management plan to relook at parking fees. And, not so much from a cost recovery perspective, but more from a parking management perspective. So, I think that's something that we would revisit on a pretty regular basis of what the fees should be. And they should vary some from place to place based on demand. So while that's not directly addressing the issue of credit card fees, that is, I think part and parcel of the conversation about what the fees on particular meters ought to be. I guess the last thing I would offer is that the vendor who is offering the service, obviously they're not doing that as a generous donation. They're looking for a way to make their revenue too. And if we're looking for something that costs us as a municipality less, then it's going to cost the customer more. In some ways, maybe not entirely, but in some ways, a zero-sum game that each of the vendors need to make their revenue on the system, and so we have to find a way to balance that as best we can.
Okay, if I could just say, maybe if we could just hold up the number 2 is talking about fees. And number 1, we're actually just talking about the hardware. I just want to make sure that the committee is okay with the hardware recommendation before we move on to the price recommendations.
Well, this does relate to the hardware itself, because if we're charging exorbitant surcharges on top of the meter fees, I mean, we certainly collect enough money through meter fees and collection of fines when folks don't pay. But at a certain point, if someone's paying an extra 50% on top of their meters, might dissuade them from going, some people, it might be a threshold that someone will drive away and not park in the Watertown Square parking lot and take their restaurant business elsewhere. So that gets a concern beyond the cost of the fee.
Sure, I think that's part of the overall discussion about setting meter rates at an appropriate level to maximize the goal that we want, which is where the meters are most in demand And we want regular turnover, setting that rate different than where there's very low demand and really not much need for that space and maybe not a need to create turnover. So yeah, I think that's part of the whole equation. You're right. We don't want to set a meter rate at a level that it just drives all the customers away. Not at all.
Thanks.
Lisa, do you have your hand up again? Lisa? You need to unmute yourself.
Yes, I do have my hand up again. So just to clarify, you said we're not using license plate recognition. My understanding though is that one, the enforcement benefit, and then two, you wouldn't need to use the placards if you, are you saying that you would have to enter your license plate if you used a credit card, even though you don't have the phone? Because otherwise you can just keep feeding the meter, correct? Which of course I love, but and you talked about taking away the time limit. So I'm just trying to be clear that I understand the technology that, is going to work with the hardware and the fee structure that you're proposing. Because I know that was part of the 10 upgrades as part of the technology was the license plate, the benefits of that.
The enforcement uses license plate recognition. I thought you meant when you mentioned that before, that you would need to enter your license plate into a kiosk. No, the enforcement does use license plate recognition. It has to connect to the internet and.
Right. So your parking technology is going to be tied to the license plate that's parked there?
No.
So if I could just maybe just clarify. So it says install smart readers, okay, coins, credit cards, implement pay by phone, use license plate recognition for enforcement. So Laura said we're not doing that, but now we're going to continue to use the current enforcement tool. So I just want to be clear that, what was in the presentation to the plan says license plate recognition technology allows permit holders to use license plates instead of dashboard placards. So we're not doing that, or we are doing that?
We are not doing that. That is like when you have a kiosk where you pay and you put in your license plate, like in Belmont Center. We're not doing that. We are keeping the meters and using the meter heads. So you will have a meter at every space.
Right, but we will continue, the parking enforcement officers will continue to use tools, the current handheld tools that they have, which scans license plates or whatever. They will still, the enforcement will still continue to use the license plate technology because everything is tied to the license plate, whether you pay by credit card, whether you pay by phone, right? So that current handheld tool, which recognizes license plates that the enforcement officers use, they will continue to use that same version or a different version of that.
But sorry to follow on, I don't understand, if it's not tied to your payment, how do you know the person hasn't been there all day if the license plate is not? It's other than someone walking and saying, well, I walked by here 4 hours ago and they were still here. If your payment isn't tied to your license plate, whether it's by phone or credit card.
If I could just jump in here, just correct me if I'm wrong, because there's an individual meter head at each space, if there's time on the meter, it's, as opposed to the kiosk system where there's no meters and, as you walk along each car, how do you know which car is paid or doesn't pay? But this one, since the meter will tell you whether it's out of time and have you write the ticket.
Right, so I can feed the meter. Anyone can keep feeding the meter is my point, right?
If I could just ask, these smart meters typically have a motion sensor that if you pull out of the space, it resets themselves. Do these meters that we're looking at have that technology?
I'll have to find out and let you know.
because many, some places that I go, they do that, and that's how, there's a motion sensor that senses whether the car is there to reset the meter to prevent feeding the meter.
And you'll still need to issue placards too.
What kind of placards? What do you
Well,
mean?
our parking program that we have now, anybody that has a placard, whether you're a senior or what employee.
Oh, for special permits, parking permits, yeah.
Because,
Yeah. We haven't really gotten to talking about that program and how we're going to change it or if we're going to change it, but that will be
going by the
subsequent.
recommendations under number 1, that the benefit was to allow permit owners to use license plate instead of dashboard placards because we were going to incorporate license plate recognition technology. I'm just going with the recommendations that were
Right.
sent in the presentation.
We're not there yet, but we will get to that, but we're not there yet. We haven't dealt with employee parking yet.
Right, and just to be clear, that recommendation in the
senior.
plan, we're not implementing because we're not doing the kiosks.
So
But
is
we
there,
will,
So if
Am
you
I
look on page,
am I
if you
looking at
look
the wrong
on-
presentation? This is the recommendations. Do I have the wrong draft? material?
no. So the implementation, we've decided to not implement the kiosk style, which would use license plate recognition. Instead, have single smart meter heads at each parking spot. So that's the difference that's the difference from the plan to the implementation is that's going to change. So I just want
And I guess so then we don't have a separate document that says implementation plan. I'm just looking at the 10
Yes.
recommended things.
So if you look at the March 6, 2020 memo, this is the March 6, 2020 memo is sort of the implementation plan, as opposed to the August 27th presentation to the council, which has had the 10 recommendations. So this is where we're at. So
Okay, thank you. I didn't have that. That wasn't forwarded to it. I didn't go back and find. I went to the Department of Planning website under transportation and parking, and I don't see it there. So I'm sorry if I don't have everything in front of me.
you don't have the March 6, 2020 memo?
we did send that out last week, but
That
maybe it
that
didn't
was-
get to everybody.
Yes, it did. It was in the July 30th.
Miscellaneous
Yes, sir.
items
Yes.
instead of the committee?
Well, that went to the whole council, so the whole council has it. So
I pulled up
that's,
miscellaneous items. I don't know. I had it from the previous meeting too, but I'll have to scroll through the whole thing to find it.
well, that's what we're working off to today is this March 6, 2020 memo, which is part of the referral to the committee, so.
And that referral to the committee was to refine the recommendations, implementation recommendations of the study. So we aren't coming forward with a plan to implement every aspect of the study. The request was that we come forward with things that we could implement immediately. So this is the first iteration of these are the things we want to implement as a recommendation, as a result of the parking implementation plan. And that was sent out as a memo.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw that and I'm not able to pull up the memo as an attachment, but yeah, I was able to pull up the other 2 pieces, but there were 3 links and that one doesn't work in miscellaneous items for me, but I don't want to hold up the meeting. Thank you.
All right, so that's it's important because that's what we're working on at this, tonight is this memo. So it was also part of the referral to the committee. So if you have it stored from that. So anyway, I just, so we've unfortunately, we've lost Kenny because his power is out, but is the joint committees, are we all okay with implementing this recommendation for number 1 for the hardware?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe that since we are on Zoom, so I'm going to ask for a motion that that the committee endorses recommendation for number 1 as presented. And of course, as presented, it's with the individual meters per space, no kiosks, and with the license plate recognition. So that, can I get a motion to that?
So moved.
Would somebody second that?
Second.
Okay, so roll call, please. So it's, so it would be Anthony Donato,
Yes.
Anthony Palumbo,
Yes.
Lisa Feltner.
Yes.
Okay, myself, yes. So that would be 4-0. And Kenny Woodland absent.
Counselor?
Yes, sir.
I'm just a little, I know it's hard to schedule meetings, but I'm a little concerned about moving forward on these the other 9 recommendations without Kenny present. And I can get in by phone some way, but it feels not particularly kosher to move forward here without his presence. He is the chair of the Committee on Economic Development and Planning, and I think that I'd love to hear what the other members of the 2 committees think, but it feels like, I know Laura's ready and I know Steve's ready, but he is the chair of the Economic Development and Planning.
And so I did get a text message from and I thought maybe his power would come back on. His text was from 6:24. It says take over the meeting for the time being. I think he was trying to log back on, but that was at 6:24, and considering it's 6:42. It's been 15 minutes. I'm not sure what the scenario is with, certainly I have power here.
I could invite him by phone number and he could go by phone. I did that once before. If you give me, I don't know if you want to give me, that maybe isn't appropriate over, but I could type in his phone number and send it to him.
I think it's fair to try to invite him back, and I know we have a quorum, but we should give him a chance to reconnect.
Well, let me just
I could send Kenny's phone number to Gideon.
just hold on. Let me call. All right. I'm gonna call.
Yeah, there's this
Yes,
mechanism.
his phone number's on the town website, so I don't think he'll care.
Oh, it is?
I would imagine it is.
Oh, I actually have it too.
He just texted me. He said he's doing his best to rejoin and will rejoin when he can. Please continue as usual without me.
So I can send him I can call him with Zoom.
It's a good idea, Gideon.
Well, Kenny's calling him, or Vinny is.
I don't have it.
So I just spoke to Kenny. He's trying to call in. He urged us to continue the meeting, and he will call in. And he'll be happy. Certainly, so I think that makes sense if the rest of the committee's okay with just continuing.
Could I just make a note, Vinny, for the minutes?
Yep.
I think maybe to Councilor Cannell's point, maybe we should note that it's not guaranteed there's no additional cost, just because it says that in the memo that we received about the pay by phone technology, that there would be no additional cost to the town, that maybe we should say it's to be determined instead.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, I will make sure that that gets in there. Okay, so are we ready to move on to number 2,
Yes.
which is price and regulate to manage parking demand and create availability? So that is, if you, that starts page 25 of the presentation, if you're looking at that. So,
Are you ready for me?
go ahead, Laura.
Okay. So these changes need to go to the Traffic Commission ultimately because they're in the price and the hours are in the traffic rules and order. The parking plan recommends that we raise the cost from 50 cents to $1 in most locations. I think 50 cents is below the market in the surrounding communities. I think probably people are aware of that because we all shop and dine in other locales. 50 cents is definitely on the low side. Newton has a variety of different prices, and Belmont is $1 an hour. Arlington is $1 an hour. Cambridge is more, and Boston obviously is more. But it also recommends that we keep the price at 50 cents an hour where we want the employees and other people who might park longer to park, and thereby leaving the on-street spaces open for customers. So it recommends that we keep at 50 cents the Wells Avenue parking lot and the Nichols Avenue parking area, which has lots of parking and very few takers. So that is the first recommendation that I'd like to hear your feedback on, and we'll need to go to the Traffic Commission.
Okay, if I could just one thing, just one question. So there's, so on page 33 of the presentation, there were 5 basically bullet points that summarize what the pricing recommendations are. Is that what you've presented in the memo here is basically appears to me to be in line with those 5 bullet points in the plan. Is that correct, or is there a difference between the 2?
I don't have what you're looking at in front of me right now. Let me see. Price and regulate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I think another part of the recommendation is that you keep your eye on it, and if there's too much demand, you raise the price. That's a little bit hard to do when you have to amend the traffic rules in order every time you change the price, unless we were to remove the price from the traffic rules in order and then have another mechanism to follow that closely.
So I guess then the question is, when you go to the Traffic Commission, is that, because so I guess this is the again, the traffic rules and orders are written in the 50s when it was, coins. This dynamic pricing is something completely different. So I guess would the department be asking that the actual fees be removed from the traffic rules and orders?
I would say that we haven't taken this quite that far a step yet. I think that might make sense in the future, but I think our initial recommendation was let's make these changes with the understanding that that we would hope to move in that direction and have a much more flexible system going forward. But and Laura, feel free to jump in if you disagree with anything I'm saying, but I don't think we took it quite to that step at this point.
So the strategy, our strategy would be let's put in the new electric heads. Let's get a program for sort of basic fees, and then we could say take a year to see how it goes and how the traffic demand goes, and then if we want to change that or go to dynamic pricing where the price changes during the day or something, we can always go back to the Traffic Commission and say we want to change it again, because without having to change the hardware, it's just changing the software. But let's get started. Let's start off simply, just to kind of get it going. Is that that sort of the strategy?
Yes, but with that one change of increasing the fees, some place, making it $1 some places and leaving it at 50 cents other places. So there would be that one change.
Okay. Councilor Feltner?
Thank you. I see that you have an option in here about considering 4-hour time limit instead of removing all time limits, which I think makes sense, especially, one of the biggest complaints is people parking all day that don't live here and they take the T. Now, of course, during the pandemic, not happening so much. So that's one thing. The other is I'm wondering about, you say to keep.
1 second. There's a phone number there. Cable access. Can you see if you can unmute them? I think you have the host privileges, or Vinny, you might be able to as well. Oh, it went away.
It was unmuted.
Is that Kenny?
It
Yes,
was.
it's Kenny.
Yeah, I'm in on my phone.
And I can't rename them either. I'm not a host.
All right, he's back in.
Yeah, so can you hear me or should I wait?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, good. We're good to go. So go ahead, Lisa.
So in the memo, I think I'd like to hear more about, to my gut reaction is why wouldn't you have a 4-hour time limit? Because if you don't have a time limit, there's no incentive to move, or are you just talking about certain places? The other thing is if you could talk a little more, the decision to keep it only 50 cents, thinking that you would encourage employees to park there. Do they not are there way more employees than your issue placards?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's still a big issue of employee parking in the prime areas. And so the idea with that is absolutely try and incentivize them to park where it's not such prime parking. And the placards sell out very quickly. The permits sell very quickly. There's many more employees than there are permit parking for employees.
and I thought at one time we were going to get a explanation of our policy and how much.
An explanation of what?
Of our current permit placard policies for the different, whether it's seniors, et cetera. So we had a full understanding of who was charged, how many they are, and what the demand is like. So it's hard. I don't have that information to balance. Sorry, I'm switching between the Zoom screen and the documents here. So in other words, what's to keep other people, like non-employees, from parking there if you want to really steer employees to park? Do you think it's the wayfinding or word of mouth, or like how is that going to be successful?
I think we'd like anyone to park in the Wells Avenue and the Nichols area more than they do now. And so it's an incentive to get people to park down there. Instead of parking on the street.
I'm sorry. I understand that. Just Steve said that there are way more employees than there are placards for. And so I'm trying to get a sense of the demand. You said there's 40 parking spaces.
I think the placards we really haven't dug into in the same level of detail. I think we will. That is that's a step that we haven't gotten there yet. I mean, we have some basic information, but we have not talked about how to change it and improve it. It's just we're not there yet, and we will come back with that information when
we would communicate with the business owners about this change and the incentive, trying to incentivize employees not to park in the prime parking areas, and that would be a way to encourage it. Pricing.
I just say that I'm in favor of, I like Laura's suggestion of a 4-hour time limit versus 2, especially, as a female, I will say hair salons or other services that easily take more than an hour. And I know in Newton, they've experimented a lot of other places where it's not really fair to some of the businesses that automatically have customers that need more time versus, you know, other types of businesses, to be sensitive so that you don't discourage customers from those types of businesses.
Yeah. Tony, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think we got, I don't know if this is up to date, but I have something from back in September of 2018, information from Sean Del Rosa at the Treasury Office that has a list of the permit parking information that maybe we could get that back out to people if that's appropriate. I don't know. But I do want to say that there's more than one item, Vinny, under number 2 that has to go to the traffic rules and orders. I mean, to change the rules and orders. So maybe we should put them all together, because there's the one about changing the meters, hours, and then there's one about specifying the meter cost. And I don't know if you got 1 through 5, but I can see where you have 5 recommendations, but there's more to this. So I would try to put them all together.
So I guess the question is, are we, and again, we didn't address the question that John Gannon brought up about the supplemental fees that the vendor, this is what we charge, certainly for the meters, but then there's the convenience fees that you'll pay that whether you use a credit card or whether you pay by phone, that the vendor is going to charge you an extra fee. So I guess, yes, Laura.
I want to put other additional information on the table, which is that this has been through a procurement, and so the prices are what the prices are. We can pick between vendors, but we cannot change the vendor costs. It's not up for negotiation because it's been procured. And
right, you mean for the credit card fees as it
the
were.
credit card fees for all the fees.
Right, so that's, and generally speaking, that is true. I never use a credit card to pay for parking at meters in other cities and towns, but people, who are willing to do it, they're willing to do it because they don't want to carry coins around with them. Not everybody perhaps is as cheap as I am, but.
And I was gonna.
Yes, Gideon.
This was going back to my hand raised a long time ago. I was just gonna say that with credit card fees in general, there's a base fee so John's comment about having a percentage is logical, but there's a base fee either way that is going to be charged for any kind of credit card transaction that we're not going to have control over. And so I suspect that 50 cents or 25 cents or whatever it is that base fee, that if you choose to use a credit card, that's the cost of business. And Ralph Donesco went into that in pretty good detail during the parking management plan process and talked about the people who want to use credit cards are going to use them, and they're going to be happy to use them if they want to park somewhere for 3-4 hours. It's not for those people who are popping into CVS. They're going to have a quarter or 2 quarters in their car. So it's about the convenience of using a credit card, and that's the fee. So I just wanted to mention that there is a base fee that all transactions have, and restaurants eat it, for instance, when they have that transaction. So I just wanted to mention that from earlier.
But also, I think Laura might have caused some confusion. And earlier we said we're not sure what the fee is going to be, and now we said it's in the contract and it's set and we can't change it. The one she's talking about that's set in the contract is for the meter heads, which includes pay by credit card. So that fee is set and that doesn't change. The part that we haven't defined yet is the pay by phone. So we're still working with vendors about the pay by phone option. And so that we're not sure what that would end up being because we haven't finalized that conversation.
Okay, so that's what so I guess the Council Gannon, did that answer your question?
Well, I mean, obviously, if I were a credit card holder, I'd prefer a 2 to 3% on transaction versus that 25 cents on a 50-cent transaction, which is, you know, a 50% surcharge. So, you know, there are gradations. Generally, it's 2 to 3% for a charge. I'd hate to see any credit card company trying to extort Watertown residents with a higher than 3% convenience fee.
I just want to be, Counselor,
Go ahead, Tony.
I just want to make sure I understand, because Steve helped separate out the credit card from the phone, the contracts. So is it just understood that there is a 25 cent user fee when you use a credit card? Is that the bottom line?
Well,
And then we're still figuring out what the cost might be from these two vendors for paying by phone. Is that correct? Am I correct in that?
Well, I'll explain my initial statement here. So the issue is the city of Boston has the similar meters that we're looking at. There's an extra 25-cent surcharge if you use a credit card. And, you know, so I bring quarters around. I'm not going to pay, you know, that's that much of a surcharge. But, you know, same if Watertown charges $1 an hour and charging a quarter per transaction, that's a 25% surcharge versus a credit card company that does a 3% based on transaction, which most credit card companies do with any other type of service. But if they're looking to do anything higher than 3%, that to me is extortionate.
Well, I think the problem is that there's, and certainly, you know, the fees, and I know we process fees. There are minimum fees that they charge you for using a credit card, and if you're paying 25 cents, if you're charging, you know, if it's 25 cents for 20 minutes, and you're putting in, or a half hour, you're putting in 25 cents in the meter, and you want to charge that on a credit card, you know, 3% would be 0.0075 cents. And it's, you know, and the minimum fee is the minimum fee. And I guess the short answer, and we've been through this, you know, back in that presentation from the consultant back in last August, and also in the earlier presentations you did for us, you know, when you pay by credit card, you know, there is a minimum fee, and either if it's worth it to you to pay, you do it. If you don't want to pay, you can use coins. It's as simple as that. The same thing is pay by phone. You know, go to Cambridge, it's the same thing. They charge you an extra, but you know, most people are not carrying around coins these days, so they really have no choice. And it's just, you know, whether they pay 50 cents or 25 cents, it sort of is irrelevant. But it really is up to the individual driver to pay what they want. But you know, we are limited in what we can do, because this is sort of industry standard. You know, it's what all happens in all surrounding communities, and you know, we can't, Watertown isn't big enough to go to credit card companies and demand to charge something different. So I think that's the short answer. Whether we like it or not, it's kind of irrelevant.
I can wrap up my concerns on this issue. So it's a procurement issue, and we have all sorts of other, you know, circumstances to consider. But if we could, all things being equal, if one vendor charges a lot less of a surcharge than another one, then I'd hope we'd go with a lower surcharge vendor.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, you know, the reason we're not doing a request for proposals because these are state specified. Okay. You know, so it's the same. It's what they charge every city and town in the state gets charged the same, because the state negotiated up. Go ahead, Steve.
And if I could just add one other thing, I think one of the reasons it's not, you know, extortionist, you know, is because there is a minimum fee for a credit card transaction. You know, you go into many retail establishments and they'll say minimum, you know, $15 charge for, you know, for you to use your credit card. And it's the same reason. They're going to get charged, you know, a certain amount for that credit card transaction, regardless how much it is. And I think Ralph was very clear, and I think very persuasive in talking about, you know, if I'm looking for the convenience of using my credit card and I'm paying $1.50 to park, I really don't care that it's $1.75 or, you know, or $1.80. I want the convenience of my card, pay, and I'm set for my hour or 2 hours or whatever it is to go do my business. And you know, I think it's just part and parcel of providing the convenience of paying with a credit card.
And just
Go
to
ahead,
wrap it
Jim.
up, I mean, I'm not looking for Watertown doing something completely different than any other vendor using credit cards. So, you know, my own point is if there's any way of all vendors being equal or advantageous to the town, that, you know, maybe look into that as an aspect.
Absolutely.
Would throw it over. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would just say at the end of the day, if we were forcing meters on citizens where you could only pay by credit card, you know, I think it would be more of a concern, to Steve and Gideon's point earlier. People can still pay with change if they want to, and if they choose to pay with a credit card, they do so understanding that there are going to be these additional fees. So I think it's up to the resident to make up their mind, especially if they know they're going somewhere either in the Watertown Square or Coolidge Square where they're going to be trying to park at a meter. If they're very concerned about the additional fees for a credit card, they're going to make sure they have change in their pocket when they go. So, you know, I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue as
Okay. Councilor Fellner had her hand up, and then Councilor Palumbo.
Thank you. Yeah, on that point, I was just going to say it's, I'm glad that we're offering cash or credit card availability to pay, because it is really frustrating. Say, oh, I just want to add an hour and now I have another credit card fee on top of, you know, my initial, especially since you're talking about having places not have time limits and people might, you know, add time, or if we're not having license plate recognition and anyone can add time. I would say that I would hope that we would have a 4-hour limit in key areas that are high demand and that are clear commuter routes. And instead of having all day, I can see going from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But if you keep it all day, that's even more incentive to park, you know, for commuters to park all day instead of having to vacate the spot and turn over. I know a lot of people are happy that the meters are off at 6 because of going to Average Joe's or other places, and then you don't have to worry about the meter. So just want to put that in there as well. And my understanding in terms of pricing is what Laura and the presentations were saying is that you'd be cheaper further away at high demand areas. So it'd be cheaper to park a little further away and you walk. I know Newton and others do that. That's correct. I'm not sure. I don't have a map in front of me, like where specifically you're talking about which meters to change the pricing. I'm assuming you may bring that to the Traffic Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just going.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah,
Yep,
just
Tony.
going back to this first recommendation on page, well, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the March 6th, the March 6th, 10 recommendations. But this number 2, so the first part of this is to approve $1 per hour on the streets on Coolidge and Watertown Square, and in the municipal lot behind the Watertown Square municipal lot, which I think is the CVS lot. And then to keep the 50 cents per hour on the Wells parking lot and the Nichols Avenue parking, in order to try to keep the street parking moving along, where people might be going in and doing something for 20 minutes and coming out. So that's what we're looking at here right now. I just want to say, into the addition to the question about this surcharge, I don't know if, I know Vinny said it was a statewide and it's the standard industry fee. I just hope there's a way in our wayfinding that people become aware of that. I don't know how you would do that, Laura, but it'd be nice if people said, I'm going to put my credit card, I'm down there at Wells Avenue, and I'm going to walk into the square and I'm going to spend 2 hours. in the square. I just want to be clear that people know that they're spending $2 plus 25 cents, and some knowledge of that be shared with the resident. But I want to support the recommendation of 1 hour per hour on the street and 50 cents per hour in the 2 lots that are specified in this particular item.
So I guess my question is, will we, as a committee, are we okay with endorsing everything that's written here under 2 on that? Because there's several paragraphs. I mean, they're all sort of interrelated. Is that, do we want to endorse this as presented in the memo?
The whole thing, all of it?
Yeah, or is
Number
it,
2.
we ready to do that, or do you want to have more discussion?
No, are you talking about number 2
Yes.
only, or, yeah, not the whole memo?
Yeah, no, just number 2, where it's still on point number 2, the fees.
Well, so are you going to leave it to the traffic commission to decide whether there's a 4-hour limit, or you're going to remove all time limits because you don't specify certain areas? I mean,
Well,
I'm happy to endorse the recommendations in number 2 as long as it gets in the minutes and a caveat that at least that I am concerned with removing all time limits from all meters.
I think, this may not be clear in here, the idea was to have no time limits in the same places that it was 50 cents an hour, because again, to encourage the employees to park there, but a 4-hour limit on the street and in the Watertown Square lot.
Thank you. That's much more clear. And then can you just remind me, is it only $5? How much it is compares to park at the MBTA lot there off Galen Street and Water?
Yeah, I think it's about $5. Yeah, I could double check on that, but I think it's about $5.
I think it's a little bit more than that.
But it's cheaper than to sit in the meter for $1 an hour all day.
Yes.
Definitely.
I'm ready to endorse the whole thing, but the second paragraph gives you an alternative.
Okay. So Laura, so you're saying,
I'm clarifying my recommendation. I'm sorry, it's not clear. Who's talking? Is that Kenny?
It's Vinny.
So what Laura, you said it's going.
Sorry, what?
Say that one more time.
Maybe somebody's frozen.
Uh-oh.
Wait, hold on a second. One person. So I know. So the last thing you said, because you were freezing and I didn't quite.
Oh, I was freezing, really? Oh, jeez.
Oh.
What I said was that the recommendation for the Wells Avenue lot and the Nichols Ave area, where it goes to 50 cents an hour, would have no time limit in order to encourage employees to park there. And the places that we're recommending for $1 an hour, which is on the street and in the Watertown Square lot, would have a 4-hour limit.
Okay. Okay, that's why okay, good. So Tony?
On the second paragraph, where we're trying to do the whole thing at once here, it says they remove the parking limits in regulated meter areas using price, not limits, to create availability. Removing time allows visitors to stay longer and who are willing to pay. Alternatively, a 4-hour limit could be imposed. What are we suggesting in this particular part of the recommendation that we're going to vote yes on?
I think to have no limits, you really then have to have the dynamic parking in order to keep people moving. And since I think we feel like we're not ready to do that, then we should do a 4-hour limit.
Okay, so there's no alternate. We're going with the 4-hour limit, right?
That's the proposal.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I also ask, are we just assuming that they're not in force on Sundays? We don't say anything about weekends, or it's because I imagine traffic commission might wonder.
Well, I don't think there was a recommendation about Sundays.
The current TRO, the current TROs say the meters are only in effect from Monday through Saturday. They're not in effect on Sundays and holidays. So that's what it currently says.
Right, so I didn't know what the parking survey that
I assume that that'll follow. So I guess Councilor Cannell has her hand up. So
I don't have all of the material printed out, but we're talking about unlimited in the Wells Avenue parking lot and also on Nichols Avenue. Is that correct?
yes.
Yes.
But then, isn't there another section that talks about increasing the time frame for the meters?
That is increasing the timeframes. The meters are now 2 hours.
No, but increasing it from what time in the morning until what time in the
Oh.
evening?
That is the next one.
Okay, so I think we need to coordinate all of these issues because the Wells Avenue parking lot is used in the evening by folks that patronize the Hellenic Center and the other communities, as well as some of the restaurants. So if we have folks that are already parked there and they have unlimited use of the parking lot, then there's a need to get, off-street parking somewhere. So these issues need to be coordinated and thought out. Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, so the recommendation was to go from
So
8
right
to
now,
8.
the Wells lot only goes from 7 a.m.
I think all the lots, I think all the parking is 7. Am I looking at the right thing here?
Yes, I think that is correct. I think all the parking is 7
7
to
to
6.
6.
So this will change it from 8 to 8, including the Wells lot.
All right, so now we're looking to increase the time that meters would be in effect, including in the Wells Avenue parking lot. But we're also saying the time would be unlimited for folks that are already there.
But not unlimited, but not free.
But not free. But then again, it's unlimited. So somebody else coming in to use the meters, where does that leave somebody else?
So yeah, it sounds like Councilor Canales is talking about there's a certain, I'm not sure, I don't want to assume, but there's certain events or there's a certain demand, if you will.
That's correct. I know what I'm talking about.
For the community and the Hellenic Center. And so I don't know if you can help that by changing the time, if it's mostly the
I think
evening.
we really need to coordinate all of the aspects instead of going piecemeal.
Well, I guess the question is, do we need to coordinate with the Hellenic Center? I think
No, I
it
don't
is.
do.
Right. So this is all of these changes.
There are other restaurants in the area that utilize the parking spaces. So what I'm saying is we're looking at number 2. We need to be looking at number 3 as well, as opposed to voting on one aspect of it and then another aspect comes up and it's not coordinated. So I'm talking about coordinating the aspects that we are voting on. It's not specific to the Hellenic Center. It's specific to everyone that utilizes the Coolidge area.
Sorry, and I'm not. So you're talking about recommendation number 3?
No, it's still 2. It's just all within 2.
So
Yeah, I agree. We should do all 3 together. We don't have to do all 3, but the recommendation is to capture some of
the fee changes. So recommendation is 2 is bringing it the hours. I'm not. So I'm not sure. So the Wells Avenue lot going from meters in effect till 6 p.m. to meters in effect at 8 p.m. To encourage turnover and availability through the dinner hour. Is that, I guess I'm not that seen as being a good thing or a bad thing? I guess I'd ask Angie to maybe just clarify that about what exactly is the issue that we want to be concerned about.
Well, if somebody is already parking at meters until 8 p.m. and they are legally there and we are trying to encourage that, then there's going to be additional use within the Coolidge Square area, and then we're short on parking.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think the idea was that both Wells Avenue and Nichols Avenue were underutilized. So, we hope to address that both by incentivizing people in terms of hours and rate to park there, educating employees to hopefully park there. And if we ended up with, the scenario that the counselor is suggesting where it gets very popular, gets used, and then we end up with a lot of the other people that would typically use those parking spaces at certain times, either when there's an event or in the evenings to visit restaurants, those types of things, then we would need to adjust. And, maybe that's, kind of putting the cart before the horse, but the idea being that we need to roll out some of these strategies and begin to implement them. And if the result is an underutilized lot suddenly becomes utilized, yeah, we're going to need to make some adjustments. And not that we would avoid there ever being a situation where somebody couldn't find a space. We certainly can't guarantee that, but I think we would certainly address that if it became a situation where those lots are all full and the Hellenic Center, has services and nobody can find a place to park. Yeah, we're going to need to make some adjustments.
Well, I think these are issues that we need to discuss because we're already aware of them. The studies will certainly show that the Wells Avenue lot might be underutilized during specific times of the day. And I know that there were other instances where it's jam-packed. The entire area is jam-packed. So what I'm saying is that if we're going to allow metered parking until 8 p.m., you're bringing in a different element where someone else coming in feels, well, gee, we know that lot's going to be accessible. So there has to be a learning curve here, and we already know about the issues. So if we know about the issues, address them before it happens.
I guess if I could add to that a bit, Chair. Yeah, in hearing what Councilor Canales is saying, my concern would be that we could react quickly enough, given that, licensing board issues things, and that it sounds like the way the traffic, right now the traffic commission would have to meet and vote on it to make change. I don't know how much flexibility we could respond quickly, because I could see where, it could become a quick issue, but then to rectify it could take longer than meets the needs of the community, the way we work things right now.
So I think the key, I think, listening to all this and goes back to the initial question.
I'm on a meeting.
Laura, you need to mute yourself.
Okay, is that when this is brought to the, I think it's this exact discussion that we're having, I think shows that when the department brings this to the traffic commission, it probably makes sense to take the setting of the rates and the hours out of the hands of the traffic commission and out of incorporating them in the traffic rules and orders, and have it be set, dynamically by the department. Because I think it kind of, the whole point about buying smart heads is that we change the programming to meet changing needs without actually having to go through the public hearing process and the publication in the newspaper. And I think that's, because that's the way the traffic rules and orders, if you want to change them, you actually have to have a public hearing and publish it in the newspaper. I think it's just, in my mind, things today are a lot different than they were in the 1950s, and I just think we need to realize that. And we need to be, in order to be truly responsive to the have. So because we don't know, you know, and analysis point, we could we able to, and I think that allows, you're correct. All these things are sort of interrelated: the time, the amount we change, and the hours of operation. And we're spending all this money to buy a new tool, and why would we want to tie our hands and say we actually can't use the tool the way it was designed? So, so I would think that the recommendation, would be that we endorse this number 2, with the clarification on the times that we made, that it would be 4 hours on the street and 4 hours in Watertown Square, and no time limits on Wells and Nichols. With the expectation that we asked, the department asked the traffic commission to the Department of Community Development Planning. Does that make sense as an endorsement from this committee? Kenny, I know Kenny.
It makes sense to me.
I'm going to ask Kenny because he hasn't had a chance to speak. I just want to get your view on that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Moving forward in that way, it's a very, it allows us to move forward first and foremost, but it also puts caveats in so that these concerns that have been raised can be properly addressed before implementation.
I just say, I'm sorry, Vinny, your whole thing froze up for me, so I didn't hear half of it, but I'll just say that I sometimes sense frustration on traffic commission's role, that they don't necessarily get real clear direction on policy. So as clear as you could make it. I don't know. I know Steve sits on the commission, obviously, and so he can help convey concerns, and maybe before the traffic commission meets, maybe there's some conversations with Hellenic Center and others, and Councilor Canellis is able to also clearly present her concerns, because I would hate for us to roll something out and have a spectacular negative, incident, especially since this is a big change. I mean, I think it's a lot of positive change, but it's a big change for the community.
Okay. Anthony, did you have, you need to unmute yourself.
I think I'm kind of in the same boat as Lisa in that you are freezing up there, but I'm definitely supportive of number 2, and like you said, just clarifying, the hours with regard to what's unlimited and what's going to have the 4-hour limit. But other than that, I'm okay with the recommendation, and I agree that I think, moving forward, we're just going to have to survey, from time to time, survey how things are going and see whether or not they need to be adjusted, whether that's price or whether it's the time. But I'm definitely supportive of moving forward with this option, or this recommendation. Excuse me.
Okay, Tony.
Clarification on the bottom one, the last one. The time to implement changes in pricing and timeliness would be when the new meters. That's fine. The changes require amending. That's right, but is that, we're just specifying that the meters cost 50 cents, and I say just repeating repeating what needs to be changed. I got it. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think my ask to Laura and Steve would be that to go in front of the traffic commission and say, we've got new technologies, specifying the change, the times and the prices in the traffic rules and orders doesn't seem to really work with what we're seeming to do here. And could we ask the traffic commission to relinquish that role to some other process run by the administration? I don't know what the traffic commission would want to do. I don't know what the chapter 90 says, but I think we need to have more flexibility to change things as, you know, as we want, rather than just have it specified in the traffic rules and orders. So that's what I would ask, you know, the endorsement from this committee to be, because I think that's what makes sense. So,
Right.
Steve, Steve and Laura, you guys in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think it would really give us a lot more flexibility to respond to conditions on the street.
Okay, so could I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Okay, and so Lisa, I'll make you the second then on that, if that's okay. Roll call. Anthony Donato,
Yes.
Lisa Feltner,
Yes.
Kenny Woodland.
Yes.
Tony Palumbo.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, so that's okay. So that's number 2. So that's only taken us what an hour and a half to get to. The people want to continue. Do you want to see if we get number 3? See if we can try to. Number 3 is a shorter one. Do you want to see if we can knock number 3 off?
I think number 3 is easy because the plan committee recommended not to go forward with that right now.
Okay.
Thought it was too risky.
So, okay, so committee, are we okay with that? Endorsing that to not add new parking at this point in time. Tony.
Could you just explain what you mean by too risky? This seems to be one of the important parts of the plan. I know it's only one sentence, but I thought this was a pretty central piece to the plan. What's too risky about it, Laura or Steve?
I think there was just a concern about it interfering with the traffic pattern in the square because what it talks about is adding parking where now you have turn lanes. It's very complicated, Watertown Square, the traffic patterns, and I think people felt like it would needs more study, I guess you could say, before we were to make that big a change in such a complicated system.
Yeah, so to be clear, so if you look at the presentation, you know, some of the places where like there's a right turn lane or a travel lane that we would remove the travel lane and turn it into a parking lane, say in front of like Stellina Restaurant, not your average Joe's or something like that, you know, and it's just, that is a really big, complicated thing that could have many unintended negative consequences. And
Thank you.
So the recommendation is to not do that at this time. That doesn't mean with other road construction projects, we could consider redoing this like we're doing on sort of the Mount Auburn Street reconstruction.
Correct.
We are thinking of putting parking back in some places that currently does not have parking on the Mount Auburn Street project. But I think this is, to Councilor Canellis's earlier point, this is something, this number 3 is just too, it would require way more engineering study and require way more community discussion. So are we, so this is easy. Is the committee in support of recommendation number 3, which is to take no action at this time? Kenny?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion, I'll take a motion that we agree with recommendation 3 not to do any action at this time. So somebody want to make that motion?
I think Lisa had a comment.
Oh, sorry, Lisa. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Sorry.
Okay, I can also comment after the motion if you want. But I was just going to say that it's disappointing to me right now that we wouldn't, even if you don't adopt the recommendation, given the pandemic especially, I would, and I know you haven't had time, Laura, but it speaks to wanting more parking or pedestrian and bikes right here in the square. And it wasn't in front of Average Joe's. It was on Mount Auburn and on Arsenal Street coming in, if you look at the map.
Yeah.
And it would be during off-peak hours as well. So I just want to comment that I know, require a lot of study, engineering study. I really don't want to be like at the State House where it goes to committee to die, because I really think that there's some good work that was done here. And I know, any changes in the square makes everybody nervous, and there's a lot, but we don't have a lot of traffic right now. And, there was a lot of good work was done on this, of course, that we're recognizing. And I'm not going to say, hey, we definitely should do number 3, because even the committee says, oh, not right now. But I want to be clear that I think that we should pursue this, and maybe as we're looking at changes on Mount Auburn or Galen Street and MBTA, and that we should keep an open mind about this, because I know the businesses have really suffered over the years by not having any parking there. And it's just so car heavy that this could be a really good opportunity to bring some more pedestrian bikes and more flexibility, if you will. I'm not saying take away all the traffic lanes, but just like the study said.
Yep.
Fine. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
So I think the motion would be that not implement at this time, subject to further traffic study in key areas. I mean, I think, does that maybe capture?
That's fair. I just really want to encourage us to be bold as possible.
Yeah, I just think that, we can't. So anyway, I think, so it's okay. Is everybody okay with the motion being, okay, if we endorse not implementing it this time, subject to further traffic study in key areas? Okay, so what, is that Kenny? Okay.
Yep.
And who wants to second that?
Second.
Okay, roll call. Councilor Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilor Feltner?
Yes.
Councilor Woodland?
Yes.
Councilor Donato?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Okay, so that's, okay, wow. Okay, so that, things go quickly. So that only took a few minutes. Do we want to go on to number 4? Number 4 is a little bit more of a fun one. Rebranding, renaming our parking lots, and this is tied into sort of the wayfinding grant. This is another really quick one, I think. Since we're doing the wayfinding plan, I think the way Laura has written it is that, so the recommendation number 4 was to actually come up with better names than the CVS lot or the Wells Avenue lot. Since we're doing a wayfinding plan that's going to kind of come up with signage and language, I think that really ties in very nicely with recommendation number 4. So I guess the recommendation in the memo is to use the wayfinding plan to come up with the names of the 2 municipal parking lots when designing the wayfinding signs. Is that, Laura, does that capture what you?
Yeah, we did kind of discuss the wayfinding signs a little bit. I think Councilor Donato wasn't there for that discussion, but we're in the process of designing wayfinding signs to make a long story short. Yeah, it would be great if we're gonna do that. Now's the time. I think that's the important message.
So Tony, you had your hand up.
I just want to make sure the wayfinding plan is much bigger than this 2, if I understand it from the last meeting. It's much bigger than just these 2 parking lots, right? It's a larger thing. That's okay.
The focus is in the 2 squares, but
yeah, it's bigger.
We'll come away with a template that we can use elsewhere.
Okay. So
Okay, Lisa, did you have your hand up?
I didn't see what he said.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm excited about this. This is a fun one. And of course you want some, unity on design, but I am also wondering about, well, I'm looking forward to some public input. I mean, it sounds like you have a diverse committee put together, but I'm hoping that, I don't know. I feel it's like a chance to call out some historic aspects in the certain areas. I'm just curious to see what they'll come up with, and since I don't, we haven't seen any minutes or what the discussions have been, just it's definitely a fun one, and I am glad we're moving forward on it. I mean,
So the good thing is the wayfinding plan with the grant has a public process to get input, which would be a good thing to come up with public process, to come up with something better. If one more person says the CVS slide.
I don't think that the consultant expects to lead the town through a process of renaming the parking lots. I think he will make the signs say whatever the town tells him to, but that's not his charge, I don't think. I think that's something we have to take up independently.
So I think that this is good. So, so do you want to make, so we would have to have, so Laura, what you're saying would have some other public process to solicit names or come up with names and see if the public buys into them?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
We can do that.
Okay.
I mean, I would hope that we would involve, the high school. I mean, I know all these design stuff can be difficult. So many ideas, but there's so many great minds here and creative types that I would just love to hear the ideas and have it be a fun public meeting. Right, Steve?
Sure.
So this is actually, yeah, okay, so I'll take a motion that we endorse this process.
I second it. I second that motion.
Sorry, Vinny, you're totally freezing up for me.
You want to make that motion?
Oh. It seems like half the people are frozen on my screen. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, Vinny's frozen. Hopefully, if we wait a second, he'll be back.
Well, so did you? So, okay. Okay. All right. So just to be clear, so Lisa, you made the motion, and Tony, you seconded it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Roll call.
Yes.
Kenny, are you there?
Yes, I vote yes.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Councilor Picciarelli?
Oh. There's a lot of trees that are down in Watertown too.
Being sad, isn't it? Oh, there he goes. He's gone.
Bummer.
Kenny, you can't see this, but Vinny just dropped off the Zoom call.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds like we got numbers 1 through 4 down. Do we want to tackle the rest of them? Or, I mean, we can obviously just set up another meeting, try to finish this up.
I think maybe we should set another meeting when I'm looking at the memo.
I think we've gotten what we really needed to the things that are really eminently moving forward. We've gotten feedback on.
Okay.
Off-street lots, yeah, I don't think there's anything else that we are moving quickly on right now. But the employee thing is in here, which we'll come back to you on.
Okay.
Is there anything in this, Laura, that I don't see it, but I'm just in case I missed it. Is there anything here that you need to take to that's changed the traffic rules and orders?
Just just the things we've discussed.
Okay.
And I think, is Counselor Cornell still on, or did she leave too? Oh, never mind.
Then he's back, but he's muted. Unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so I am
There
back.
you go.
I don't know what happened, but, so I assume everybody voted yes on that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see what it was we voted on.
Oh my God, I don't know, it's what's going on. It's just like, I just keep.
I know my husband's motioning to me. I think we have tree branches down.
Oh, really?
So do we want to, so.
Then before you got on, Laura was saying that we probably hit upon the more pressing matters, so they have enough to move forward with until we can hold another meeting. So if it makes sense to.
All right, well, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because it's getting a little bit, it's like everybody keep freezing. So I'm okay, we can, Kenny, if it's okay with you, we can reschedule another meeting to take the rest of the points.
Yeah.
So does, okay, that's good. So does somebody want to make a motion to
Motion to continue.
continue? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Let's take a roll call. Lisa Feltner.
Yes, and just thank you, Steve and Laura. A lot of good work.
Yeah, a lot of good work.
Thank you.
Counselor Donato.
Yes, and thank you as well.
Counselor Woodland.
Yeah.
Counselor Palumbo.
Yes, and thank you.
And yes, also for myself. All right, well, good. So we got a lot accomplished despite the weirdness of the weather and the other kind of stuff. So thank you everybody for really persevering on this. It's been.
And thank you for taking the minutes, Vinny. I would have been lost after the first discussion, so.
All right. Okay, no problem at all. No problem at all. All right, so thank you everyone, and stay safe and have a good evening.